If I could have your attention, please. We're going to start the show here this evening, and the way we begin it usually is we have the Leominster High School football team come up, and we're going to give them a round of applause, and then we're going to have Coach Palazzi say a few words. So David, if you would, we're ready. Send them in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Just first like to thank the Hall of Fame committee and congratulate all the inductees tonight, as well as our 81 team. I think it's a special night, obviously, for my team and all teams to come here and just see the wonderful tradition that is carried forward by many of you sitting out here today, as well as the committee. Just trying to further everything we do with Leominster football and how important it is. As far as our season this year, obviously everyone knows we struggled a little bit, but you know, this year I got to say, you know, one of the most important things for me was these guys standing in the back. I mean, they could have cashed it in, you know, after starting a difficult time, but they really worked hard and, you know, getting better each and every week. I know, you know, we have 4 freshmen on the team, a number of sophomores, and 9 seniors. So, you know, I told the seniors, and I'm sure they're going to hear it tonight and Wednesday night, about the importance of Thursday's game. They know that. They're raring to go. That red team's already chirping about how they're going to sweep us and how they're going to dominate us and all those things. But, you know, we're going to be ready. I can guarantee you that. You know, with that said, you know, one of the things we try to stress in the football program is academics first. We have 30 of these guys have a 3.0 or better, and we have 15 with a 3.5. So I'm really proud of the way they played this year, and we just got to finish it off strong on Thursday, and guarantee you we'll be ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. We're going to have these players stick around for a little bit, only for a few moments. At this time, I'm going to ask Mark Bonanza to come up and give the story behind the Lou Little Award and the Ray Comerford Award, and then we'll announce those winners. Ladies and gentlemen, my partner in this thing, one of the board of directors and founders would be Mark Bonanza.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's an honor to be able to do this each year. After the first year that we did this, we decided to expand the heritage of what we're trying to do here, and that is, of course, to preserve heritage. And we first created the Lou Little Award, and then a few years later we created the Raymond Comerford Award. These 2 awards go to high school senior football players of Leominster High, of course. And the first one that we're going to award is the Ray Comerford Award. Many of you here know that Bernard Doyle did a tremendous service to the city of Leominster back in 1931 when he dedicated Doyle Field as a permanent recreation and football venue to the city of Leominster. But what goes unnoticed sometimes is that really at the same time, Bernard Doyle did something else, and he hired the first professional football coach that Leominster ever had. There was a time during the teens and 20s that Leominster just could not compete with Fitchburg. In fact, between 1913 and 1924, there were 15 games played, and Leominster tied one of them and scored a total of 20 points. That wasn't satisfactory to Bernard Doyle, so he hired Ray Comerford in 1927. Ray Comerford took the reins, and he lost to Fitchburg 64-0. Still the greatest disparity in the history of the series. But in 1928, they won the game 6-3. In 1929, 6-0. First time Leominster won back-to-back games since 1912. 1930 came along. It was the last game played exclusively at Crocker Field because Doyle Field was opening. Exciting game, 8,000 fans showed up, record crowd. Leominster lost a hard-fought game, 6-0, but look forward to 1931 with great excitement with their new coach and their new field. But then something happened. In August of 1931, just before the football season opened, Coach Comerford went to relax at the seashore, the South Shore of Boston, and discovered that a young man was trapped in the undercurrent. And he went out there to help him. And he grabbed this young fellow and started swimming back to shore. And he tired. And two other men noticed this, and they jumped in the water to help the coach and the young man. And they were able to save the young man, but they were not able to save the coach. And Coach Comerford drowned in August of 1931. And the Fitchburg Sentinel said that he died the way he lived, helping the younger. And we think it's important to recognize the significance of this man and what he did for Leominster High School football, and also, how he died. So we created an award to memorialize this heritage, and I'll read you the criteria for the award. The recipient of the award will be a young man of character. He will have a giving spirit, always willing to lend a helping hand to teammates in the greater community. He might not be a starter or a highly skilled player that gains notoriety with each passing week of the season. He will be the sort of player that takes his duty on the team seriously, knowing that his function is important to the success of the entire team, even though there are no accolades on Saturday morning. In sum, the recipient of this award will be the type of player that his teammates will remember as the years pass and the headlines fade. Each year, we've had the great fortune to have some very significant young people really fit this criteria. And this year's recipient truly epitomizes the criteria of this award. This young man is a 4-year football, basketball, and baseball player at Leominster High School. He's a great academic student. He takes honors and AP classes. He's consistently on the honor roll. But most importantly, and especially for the criteria of this award, he gives of himself to the community. He volunteers with the Leominster Fire Department to raise money for MDA each year. He volunteers for the Greater Gardener for Life Cancer Walk. He volunteers as a coach for the 7th and 8th grade girls recreation basketball teams. And lastly, he works summers for the Leominster Rec youth camps. He is truly a young man who deserves this award. He's a great teammate. During his career at Leominster High, he has spent a lot of that time injured, but nonetheless stays very involved with the team. And and I'm told he's the first to congratulate his teammates upon scoring a touchdown or doing something significant or making a significant contribution to the benefit of the team. It gives me great honor to introduce this year's Ray Comerford Award, and it goes to Jack Young. This is for you.
Excuse me? Mark, come over here, please.
In a moment, it's amazing, every year we get a young man that really fits this award, and we're so happy. Give Jack another round of applause. In a minute, Gilly will be up here to introduce this year's Lou Little Award winner, but I thought I'd describe a little bit about who Lou Little was for the audience and the criteria of the award. Lou Little, of course, was a Leominster native that played his high school football here, went on to play college football at Vermont and Penn, and later played in the NFL for a couple of years. But his legends really were created as a coach, both at Georgetown and later on Columbia University. In January 1st, 1934, he coached Columbia to one of the greatest upsets in college football history. At that time, the Rose Bowl was the only college bowl game there was in the nation. And Stanford, who was the winner of the Pac-10 conference, got to choose who they would invite to play in that bowl game. They first chose Michigan, who was the unofficial national champion, and Michigan didn't want to sully their record, so they declined. And then the next choice was Princeton, who had an undefeated record, and they didn't want to sully that, so they declined. And then he chose tiny Columbia, because Columbia had had a tremendous season. Well, Columbia, of course, is an academic place, not a big college football school. And the deans and the administration at Columbia really didn't want their team traveling around across the country to participate in a big-time commercial college football game. Coach Little pervaded upon them to allow that to happen. Most of the football pundits thought that they would get beat by 40 or 50 points. And then something happened. They went across the country and they beat Stanford 7-0. That was like winning the Super Bowl in 1934. Coach Little went to the microphone, no television back then, and the first words that were out of his mouth were, "Hello to all my friends in Leominster." And they said you could hear the cheer go up in downtown Leominster through the windows closed against the January cold. The next year, he helped design the Heisman Trophy with Jim Crowley, one of the Notre Dame Four Horsemen, as well as John Heisman. In the first year, the award was called the Downtown Athletic Club Trophy. After John Heisman died, it was renamed, and now we know it, of course, as the Heisman Trophy. So Lou Little had a tremendous football career. He is in the College Football Hall of Fame, and we as Leominster residents can be justly proud of his accomplishments and the heritage that he created for Leominster High School football. So we thought as a board it was apt, again, to recognize this heritage. The criteria for the Lou Little Award is as follows. The honor is consistent with the values of Lou Little. It goes to a man throughout his career was as concerned for the education and future of young men he coached as the results on the football field. The honoree should combine good character on and off the football field with humble determination. He will be a leader by example, loyal and hardworking. The full utilization of his God-given talents will be more important than the exploits on the field alone. He will embody a feature of football that honors the underestimated, well-led squad, which prevails through teamwork, not because they are better players, but because they are better men. And I'm going to ask Gil to come up and give the award.
Thank you, Mark. So the criteria, as Mark pointed out, is also scrutinized heavily by the Board of Directors of the Football Hall of Fame, as well as input that we get from Coach Dave Palazzi, as well as information that we get from the teachers in terms of how this individual's character is personified through high school, what kind of record does he have or not have, more importantly. But I happened to be down at a game this year, and I had my eye on this individual because we had heard that he was a candidate for it, and he did perform in an exemplary way that game, you know, like a true sportsman. And we as a board of directors sit down and we scrutinize 4 or 5 names, and this name kept on surfacing as the recipient that we thought should share this award, which we like to call, you know, one of the most coveted awards in Leominster football. So this year, we picked an individual, again, who has over a 3.0 average in high school, and we chose Dominic Vasquez. Come on up, Dominic. Dominic wants to go to Florida and play football with Swan. He gets to take home this little one right here.
Go blue!
It's a good play. Okay, we're going to let him settle outside. The football team is dismissed. Good luck. We'll see you Thursday morning. At this time, I'm going to introduce a speaker that we've got for this evening, who is also speaking Wednesday night for the banquet before the game. And the reason I asked him to do this as a favor is because he's a friend. We happen to spend some time together in Vermont skiing. He's a former Leominster High School football player. He went on to have an extraordinary career as president of the PGA. Pretty prestigious position to have president of PGA for America. And Jimmy is the type of guy who left Leominster and decided to be better than average. And it has carried him through his entire life. He's a very successful individual. And we're just honored to have him be here tonight. He's currently Vice President of Okemo Golf in Ludlow, Vermont. And he told me that he thinks that one of the reasons he was successful was due to situations that he had learned in the locker room. You know, and we all know, those of us who play football here, that you know, you have to figure out if you're down at halftime how to get ahead. if you're ahead, how to stay there. And he says he's learned and used this psychology to propel him through life. And I said, you gotta come speak to these kids before the Thanksgiving game. He graciously accepted. So I'm gonna introduce you now, Jim Remy, and he's also here with his wife, Darlene. Jimmy, would you come on up?
Well, good evening, everybody, and certainly I can't tell you how much this means to me to be invited to this event. It really is extraordinary for me to be invited to be here this evening with you at the Hall of Fame induction, and also on Wednesday night with the football team at their pregame banquet. I played high school football for Leominster 45 years ago. 45 years ago. And I have been a fan of Leominster football for exactly that many years. I can tell you that there isn't a season that goes by that I don't spend time on, whether it be on the radio or the internet, following what's happening with Leominster High School football, and especially at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Day. I'm always ear to the ground to really follow what was and is and always will be a tremendous tradition of high school football in America. And sometimes I think that people in Leominster fail to understand what a great tradition it is because we've been around it so long. But when you're away from it, like I've been away from it for 45 years, and I still bore my friends in Vermont with stories of playing high school football for Leominster, it is a great tradition and a great history, and it is something that you could see tonight. And I'm sure glad I don't have to play against any of those kids because they are bigger and badder and faster. Wow, holy moly, I couldn't believe it. I want to start by I'm going to only speak for 5 or 6 minutes, and I know you have a lot of wonderful inductees to honor this evening. And really, that's what this night is all about. This night is all about the inductees. And you know, when you grow up in Leominster, as I did, you grow up in a sports town. This is a sports town. It always has been and always will be. It's one of the great sports towns in Massachusetts, as many of those Boston teams found out when they traveled west to play the Blue Devils. They found out that Leominster wasn't the farm boys, but it was a great sports town with great athletes. You know, I grew up in Leominster playing Little League Baseball with Rick Marchand, right down in front, and Babe Ruth League Baseball. I played Pop Warner League for the Leominster Giants. I played Pop Warner football. I played junior high school football. I skied at Pheasant Run Ski Area. Anybody remember that one? I know all the Crowleys remember it great. And then I went on to high school at Leominster High School. And I got to play football for one of the greatest high school coaches that could ever be. And people argue that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I got to play for Huck Hannigan. And I got to play with guys like Tom Fraterelli and Mike Antossi and John Fendaca right over there in the corner. Gilly Donatelli. Some great players and a great time in the early 70s. And I knew that it was a special time. Trust me, I knew it was a special time at that time in my life. And I was not a star. Trust me. As a sophomore, I rode the bench. As a junior, I got to play when Tom Fraterelli let me in the game. After we had a big lead, I guess. And as a senior, I did get to play quite a bit, and I got to play the greatest position in the world. And only the guys in this room that know that football team will remember the position called blood end. I was the blood end. Well, it was an outside linebacker position, basically, and I loved it, and I really enjoyed playing that. And I learned so much playing with those teams. I can remember being in high school at Leominster High School, pretty much your basically average student who wasn't really sure where he was going in life. It was the 70s, you know. And I remember having a dream that if I could only figure out a way to make a living in sports, it would just be the most fantastic thing. And fortunately, in high school, my two best subjects were phys ed and public speaking. See something going on here? So I graduated from Leominster High School, and I went off into this crazy world in the 70s and became a professional ski racer and a professional skier. And it was all because of what I learned at Pheasant Run and what I learned from, chasing a dream and trying to reach a goal, setting the next goal. What was my next goal? My first goal was to get out of Leominster. It was the 70s. My second goal was to become a professional skier, and I did. And then one day I woke up and said, this thing is great in the winter. I make money, but in summer I don't have a job, so I became a professional golfer. Who would ever think that a professional golfer and a ski professional would be at the Leominster High School Hall of Fame football banquet speaking? But thank you, Gilly, for inviting me. What has LHS football meant to me, and what has Leominster High School and football meant to me? It meant everything, really. I've been talking about it for 45 years. I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have been able to stand up in front of 40,000 people at the Ryder Cup, or to reach out to hundreds of millions of people on CBS Sports with Jim Nantz, or to go to the White House with the U.S. Ryder Cup team, or to play golf with Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods and all the greats of the game. I'm fortunate enough to be in a Hall of Fame myself, so I know what it means to be in the Hall of Fame. I know what it's going to mean to these people who will be inducted tonight. The importance of tradition and honoring those who contributed is an amazing thing. And I've been fortunate enough to be at many events just like this where great people are honored for great achievements. And it means so much to them, but it means even more to those who support them, their families, those who help them to get where they are. Because trust me, no one ever gets into a Hall of Fame without the help of a lot of people. Thanks, Darlene. How special is tonight and how special is this week for me personally? Well, to be able to speak with you tonight about the tradition and the history and the meaning of being inducted to a Hall of Fame means the world to me. To be able to speak to those gentlemen, those champions, on Wednesday night and talk to them about what it means to play Leominster High School football and what it means to play at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Day, and how they will remember that, hopefully, for the next 45 years. But again, most importantly tonight, it's about the inductees. And as I said earlier, very few athletes ever are inducted into a Hall of Fame. Look at all the great baseball players that never got into Cooperstown, or all the great football players who never made it to the Hall of Fame. So it's a special honor, and it's something that should not be held lightly. And for those of you here tonight to honor your inductees, I applaud you. To each and every one, I congratulate you for a job well done. It's great to see you honored in this special fashion, especially within a program that has a great tradition and history. And don't ever let that go. I worry a little bit about that happening in Leominster as the millennials take over the world. Will they remember the greats of our tradition? I hope not, certainly not with Mark Bodanza around, our historian who just, since I've read his book, I've even been more excited about it. Be proud of Leominster and be proud of Leominster High School because it is a special place. Some wonderful and great people have come out of there, as we'll see tonight. To each and every one of the inductees, I congratulate you. It means so much. To the family of Coach Austin and to those who are here to honor Coach Austin tonight, I know this must be an emotional time. Obviously, to lose Mike this past spring was an incredible, it was awful. I never knew Mike, but I've read up a lot about Mike in the last few months as I knew I was coming here. And he was a special guy. He was special to Leominster, and he touched so many lives in such a wonderful way in this community And you, who are here to honor him tonight, should all be proud of that. It's a special time. Before I close, I just want to say that I spoke to my wife all week this week about this night and about Wednesday night. And I must admit, I've spoken in front of millions of people, and I was more nervous about this all week long than I've been at any of these speeches that I've given. And the reason is because it meant so much to me to, like I said, an average player who left Leominster, and, you know, I hit some forks in the road in my life, and somehow I made the right decision at every fork of the road. And I'm very fortunate to have the life that I've had, because for the last 45 years, I made my living in sports, and that means a lot to me. To Gilly Donatelli, my friend, I want to thank you for your friendship, and Mikey, thank you for your friendship for years. We used to ski together at Pheasant Run. You know, what you've done for Leominster High School football is amazing. You have been a monumental contributor for many, many years to an outstanding program, and you have been an outstanding member of this community. And I think you being inducted into the Hall of Fame, Leominster High School Hall of Fame football tonight, is a crowning moment for you and for your family. So congratulations. So thank you all for listening to a golf pro ski racer at the Leominster High School football banquet. It's been an incredible life, and I really do. When I think back to all those times playing football with Coach Viette right down here in front, who was a rookie coach when I was a sophomore or a junior, you know, playing with Pete Bolio and Huck Hannigan and John Demzinski and all those great football coaches at Leominster High School, and the great talks that we had I was talking to Mark about it tonight, about you know, all the great speeches that Huck gave in the locker room. And it made me believe in myself, and it made me believe that I could accomplish my goals. And I only hope that every football player that graduates from Leominster High School can have the same goals and the same dreams. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Jim, you never lost to the Leominster Dolphins, did you?
We might have.
Oh, boy. It is my pleasure to present our first inductee of the night, Joe Benzino. I consider myself privileged to have been a teammate of his. Joe was a two-year starter for Leominster back in 1978 and 1979. He was a defensive and offensive lineman. He was an integral part of the 1978 team, which went undefeated and were Super Bowl champions. That team was ranked #1 in New England and #6 in the nation. They allowed only 50 points in 11 games, including 6 shutouts. Joe was a major contributor and dominated the defensive line. Listen to this. During his 4-year football career at Leominster High, his teams lost a total of 1 game. Crazy. I think a common denominator of great players, many who are here tonight, is that they're highly respected by their coaches and fellow players. They are great teammates, and that was Joe. He was strongly recommended for the Hall of Fame by many of the players on the teams he played on. Having spoken to several of them, Joe, I thought you'd be interested to hear what a few of them had to say about you. Quote, "One tough SOB, never said a peep, could have cared less about fanfare or having his name in the paper. All he cared about was winning. would have been the perfect Bill Belichick player. He just did his job, and he did it well. Another of your defensive mates had this to say: great teammate on and off the field, unselfish. He wasn't a big rah-rah guy, rather he quietly just got the job done. He very seldom got beat on the defensive line. I played inside linebacker behind Joe and didn't have to make many tackles because he would usually take care of that in the line of scrimmage. He was strong, he was tough, and he was unmovable. When we needed a stop on the inside, you could always count on him to be involved and make a big play. It was a pleasure being his teammate. This from another teammate. Relentless. I remember his junior year we played Brockton at Doyle Field. We shut them out. Joe must have made 20 tackles that day, from sideline to sideline. Incredible and unheard of for a defensive lineman. Lastly, and this was my favorite, please tell Joe I would like to thank him for beating me up every day in practice. I can't tell you how much I thoroughly enjoyed it. That was actually from me. That's true. But all kidding aside, Joe, you made us all better players, and more importantly, you made us a better team. We never faced an opponent that was remotely as exceptional as you were. And speaking of, for all of us and all your former teammates, we thank you for that. Tonight, Joe was accompanied by his several family members, his lovely wife, Teresa, his sons, Joey and Michael, who I know you're tremendously proud of. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Joe Benzino to the Leominster Football Hall of Fame.
As Joe said, I am a man of a few words, so this is going to be brief, I'm sure. I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight, and a special thanks to Joe for that embellished introduction. I also want to thank the committee for picking me in this great honor to be in the Hall of Fame. But there's no way I could get here without the talented and great teammates of our time and our great coaching staff, which a lot of them are here today. Coach Vayette, Coach Bolio, Coach Dubzinski, and Coach Mercier. I'd like to give them all a round of applause, please. And most of all, I'd like to thank my wife, Teresa, and my family for standing beside me all the time. They're my greatest fans, and I love them dearly. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here tonight and to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. There's no place I'd rather be than here tonight, and thank you.
Chris, you're up, man. Come on up.
The infamous words, hello to all my friends in Leominster. Special congrats to everybody getting into the Hall of Fame tonight. And I'd like to give a real special shout out to my very best childhood friend growing up, Johnny Crowley, going in tonight. Nice job. I know Jack Young left,
but I want to wish him luck on Thursday and congratulate him on that Ray Comerford award. That was awesome. You know, back in the mid-'80s, Leominster High School marching band was anticipating this up-and-coming drummer coming from the middle school level. His name was Steve Bump LeBlanc. But luckily over time, Steve decided to give up the drum line and take up the offensive line. And Leominster High School benefited from that, and it proved to be a pretty wise choice. Bump was part of a team, I can't even tell you, they had more fun playing football than any group of kids I've ever coached over the years. They truly, truly enjoyed each other's company, and I still, to this day, believe that his junior and senior year were probably the most fun I've ever had coaching. And when you're coaching football, it's not often that you laugh every day with these kids, and you laughed every day. Each and every one of those guys on that team are still my friend today, and I'm very proud of them, and I'm real proud to put Bump in tonight. Bump was a bruising offensive tackle. He's a big guy. You'll see him when he gets up here. He's a big guy. He was big then, too. He's probably the best offensive tackle I've seen while I coached. And he opened up some pretty gaping holes for what I call, dare say, some very fortunate running backs. And they weren't just holes, they were more like garage door openings when he made. Bump, he loved being in the trenches. He loved dominating the line of scrimmage. Something he did game after game after game after game. He was just an absolute warrior. And once again, no accolades, just did his job. And as you can recall, and I'm sure everybody in this room does, he was part of that unbelievable game against Brockton High School, which is probably the event of Doyle Field, where they were #1 in the country. And we just went in, they didn't care who they were playing. It really made no difference to them. They went in there and they absolutely destroyed them. The game was not even close. Bump was a captain his senior year, a league all-star, a member of the Telegram and Gazette Super Team, a participant in the Mass Shriners game, and now a member of the Leominster High School Football Hall of Fame, number 78, Stephen Bump LeBlanc.
Thank you very much. This is truly an honor. I'd like to thank my coaching staff, my teammates, my family, and for all their support. Receiving this award as an offensive lineman is something that is totally unexpected. It takes a different type of person to be an offensive lineman. You are not revered like any other position on the field. All that people remember is who made the big pass, who made the big catch, who made the big run, who made the big tackle. No one ever remembers who made the big block to make any of those things happen. And you are actually only noticed if you screw up. You are actually judged by your failures and not your successes. So with that being said, here is to all the unsung heroes of the offensive line. Go Blue Devils, and thank you. Nice to meet you.
Bump's exactly right. just like the career of a long snapper. The only time anybody pays attention to that is when you make a mistake. I don't believe the next inductee is here, but that doesn't dull his accomplishments. Brian Micucci was a 4-year starter at Leominster High School. That's a rare thing. He was a Telegram and Gazette All-Star in 1987 and 1988. And then in his senior year, he was selected as the Gatorade All-American Player, a very prestigious award. He was a devastating and powerful runner, and he also started on the defensive side of the ball as a linebacker. He contributed greatly to that 1988 game against Brockton, and a lot of us, I think, can remember standing on the hillsides or being in the stands on that October evening when Leominster really made history, when the Brockton Boxers came in here ranked #1 in the country. I can still remember Brian making some of those really significant tackles. And I want to, at this point, I was looking at the program this afternoon, and I want to give some great accolades to Joe Carolus and even more to his daughter Kayla, who designed and created this program. And every year they do a tremendous job on it, and we're really happy to have both their enthusiasm and their talents. And you won't find anybody more enthusiastic about Leominster football than Joe and the heritage of Leominster football. And each year he challenges us to come up with a better program. And one of the things he did this year, which I thought was a really tremendous idea, was to record all of the Lane Trophy Award winners. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the Lane Trophy is a MVP of the Thanksgiving game, which I believe was started back in 1964. And I think the first recipient was Rick Warner, if I'm not mistaken. But that's not why I mention it in particular. What I noticed when I was looking through the list that Kayla so expertly put into the program, Brian Micucci won the Lane Trophy 3 out of the 4 years he was in high school. He won it as a freshman. I can tell you from looking at it that no one ever won that award as a freshman. And the year that he didn't win it, his sophomore year, they gave it to, I think, 4 linemen. I'm not exactly sure who the 4 recipients were. But that just really speaks to what kind of a player Brian Micucci was. He went on to a successful college career at Syracuse University, was a captain there during his senior season, and he's gone on to a career in college football coaching. His father, Anthony Micucci, was inducted into the Leominster Football Hall of Fame in 2011, and the Micucci family generally has contributed greatly to Leominster football. So let's have a round of applause for Brian Micucci.
Next, we're going to have Dave Palazzi give the award to Brian Mastre Faro. Brian came to my house one day and asked if his coach, high school coach, could induct him because of the impact that he had on Brian his junior year, which carried into his senior year, and he was asking for David to speak on his behalf. So, David, consider.
Thanks, Gil. So I'd like to congratulate all the inductees. Seems like a lot of them have a lot of ties to UMass here tonight. Even one of our speakers over here, Youngie. And JC, Johnny Crowley, congratulations. I was your quarterback at UMass. I won't say it the other way around. And Bump, how do you follow Bump as a quarterback throwing a ball around? You can listen to that speech. I mean, up here with, you're right though, you are right. Those linemen are the special people that get it done. Anyway, Brian Mastre Faro had asked me to speak on his behalf. Brian played from the fall of 1990 to 94. He was a 3-year varsity letterman, quarterback, receiver, and cornerback. His junior year, he had 23 receptions, 4 touchdowns, 2 versus Brockton, 1 Wachusett, and 1 against Fitchburg. Should have been 2, but I'll get to that in a minute. 1 2-point conversion and 1 interception. He was Midland Wachusett honorable mention as a junior. His senior year, he was a captain, 31 receptions, 6 touchdowns, the most valuable player on the team, and also an all-star for the Midland Wachusett League. Brian, I'll never forget, I came back, I forget what I was doing, and I had gone up to Coach Dobzinski, and I'd asked him if I could get involved in coaching, and he said, talk to Roger, you can work with Roger, and I think, you know, that's the first time I met Brian. I walked into the rubber gym, and Roger Mercier was running some illegal drills in there with some of the receivers and the quarterbacks, so he had asked me to work with the quarterbacks and receivers. And I said, well, who's your quarterback? And he said, Brian Mastre Faro. So I walked up to Brian and I said, hey, Brian, I guess we got some work to do. And he's like, Coach, I don't think I want to play quarterback. I'm like, what are you talking about? I heard you're an unbelievable athlete. Coach said you're a tremendous player. He said, I don't know. It's not, my heart's not into it. I said, hey, your heart's got to be into the position. And just Brian's demeanor. Brian, like I think all the inductees, very humble people. They just want to go out and do their business. They don't want to be the stars, the heroes. And that's really what Brian's all about. He just wanted to be, he didn't want to be the star quarterback. He wanted to contribute to the team in any way he could. We ended up finding Ryan Gallagher as the quarterback that year. And, you know, Brian went to receiver, and with the power running game that we had back then, Brian just absolutely ripped it up. I've never seen anyone, couple people, JC was one of them, Brian, probably the best I've ever seen run the slant corner. If anybody knows that pass, it's usually running the goal line. You give a hard step to the outside, you break it in hard, and then you go back out to the back pylon. And we worked on that pass so many times. And I'll never forget Thanksgiving at Fitchburg in 1992. We were driving, it was very muddy. We ran that play, and I told the quarterback, I said, you just got to get rid of it. Don't even look at the receiver, look at the DB's feet, and when he steps hard to the inside, you just lollipop it out. I think that day was ankle breakers was invented by Brian because the kid just fell down, quarterback threw it up, and Brian just scored. However, there was a flag on the field with a holding call, which Coach Dubs, you might want to allude to that. That's probably the most angry I've ever seen Coach Dobzinski in my entire life. Fortunately, we lost that game, but you know, all I can remember is that whole year, just Brian's, his teammates loved him. He was a great team player, extraordinary athlete. His dad's in the Hall of Fame, and he just made everybody around him better, made the team better, and I think that's what's most important when you're talking about Hall of Fame inductees. They make their teammates better, and they're really good people to be around. He was also played 4 years of baseball at the University of Massachusetts. I mean, that's pretty extraordinary to go play football and be so talented and then play college baseball at the Division I level. So without further ado, I'd like to congratulate Brian Mastre Faro with this year 2017 induction into Leominster Hall of Fame.
Oh, this is nerve-wracking. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the Hall of Fame committee for their continuous efforts of recognizing athletes in the community. By no means do they have an easy job. The expression that kept kind of coming through my mind when I was getting prepared for this was that it takes a village to raise a child. That expression certainly held true for me growing up. When I think back to all the people who cared for me and helped me, who taught me, who were kind to me, guided me, who believed in me and stayed positive, it really was a communal effort. It was, you know, the city, the community of Leominster. It started with God, my parents, my grandparents, my sisters, my brothers-in-law, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my friends and their parents, all of my teachers, my guidance counselors, all of my principals, all of my coaches here, my teammates, even my opponents. All of you had a profound impact on me on and off the field, and you were the reason that I stand up here this evening. And words cannot express how grateful and thankful I am to all of you. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Okay, what we got next? Can't see it here. What's next?
Give me a second. Coach Zipzinski.
It's you. No, you. Okay.
Mike Wallace. Coach Zipzinski.
Coach Dobzinski, would you please step up and induct Mike Wallace for us? Thank you.
Good evening. Coach Palazzi was 100% right. It was the worst call in the history of football. And he didn't finish the story. I actually sprinted off the field at Crocker Field. I chased the official up the stairs up into the clubhouse, and if it wasn't for Doug Grutchfield pulling me off of the poor official, I'd probably be in jail right now. But I think the world of all officials. So they're very good. Let me get my glasses on here. Good evening. I'd like to congratulate all the inductees in this year's class, Hall of Fame class, all the friends, family, and supporters of Leominster High School football. It's a great honor for the guys being inducted. They were all great players, and it's an honor that's well-deserved. Tonight I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Michael Wallace. When I was asked to introduce Mike by Gary Wallace's brother, I considered it not just a great responsibility, but also an esteemed honor. It's because I consider Michael Wallace to be an extraordinary example of ambition, intelligence, strength, and compassion. He was a superior athlete who excelled on the football field and a constant student who always strived for greatness. Michael represented the kind of student athlete his teammates could look up to. The kind of kid who put his heart and soul into every aspect of the game. For all 4 years of his Leominster High School football career, I could always count on Michael to play with passion and demonstrate true leadership. Just listen to some of these impressive athletic achievements he achieved. Michael was elected captain his senior year. He was named Telegram and Gazette Super Team All-Star in 1990. He also made the Telegram and Gazette All-Star Team in 1990. And he also played a pivotal role in 2 Super Bowl wins of 1989 and 1990, where he rushed for over 100 yards in each one of those victories. In his junior year, he had 174 carries for 1,259 yards and 12 touchdowns. But that was just the beginning, because he told me after the season, when he was entering his senior year, I'm going to double that total. And Coach Mercier and I just said, well, we hope you do, but you're setting it pretty high. But in his senior year, he had 187 carries for 1,453 yards and 21 touchdowns. So in 2 years of playing, carrying the rock for us at Leominster High, he had 2,712 yards rushing and 33 touchdowns. That's pretty good career. That's pretty good career. But that's just one facet of Michael's extraordinary talent. In the classroom is where he really shined bright. Michael was recognized as a 4-year honor roll student at Leominster High, and he was also elected as class president. Michael was so impressive academically that he was accepted to Harvard, where he also played football. In fact, he is the first LHS graduate in over 50 years to have played for the Crimson's varsity team. And with hard work, and his hard work paid off, he graduated with a degree in psychology from Harvard University, cum laude. He was the whole package. He was the whole deal. I would like to share something I will always remember about Michael. Coach Mercier and I got together this week and we talked about Mike Wallace, and we both came up with a couple of little stories about him. No matter how cold it was, how wet, or how bad the weather was, how bad the weather conditions were, Michael never wore a t-shirt or sweatshirt under his pants. He wore his practice shirt, his shoulder pads, and that was it. And he also cut his practice shirt and game shirt so his stomach was exposed, and he didn't care. And he did get me into a little bit of trouble because my athletic director at the time, Mr. Ted Damko, he called me into his office and said, "Tell that Wallace kid to quit cutting his shirts. This is costing us money." So I said to Ted, "Ted, I got to disagree with you on this one. I'm thinking of telling all the other kids to maybe cut their shirts and maybe they'll all play like Wallace is playing." As Michael's former high school coach, I am so proud that he is receiving this award. I will always remember number 22 and how lucky I was to coach him. This evening, I would like to bring up his mother, Angela, his sister, Kim, and brother, Gary, to accept this award on behalf of Michael Wallace, class of 1991. Would you please come forward, please? If there was a Hall of Fame for families, this family would be in it.
I usually like to just talk, but my daughter's much better at it than I am, so she wrote me something and I have to read it. First, I want to thank Coach Dubzinski. Michael had the greatest respect for you, and you taught him a lot. He would be so proud that you were here to introduce him, and it means the world to us as a family. Thank the committee for recognizing Michael in this distinguished honor. There's a common phrase often spoken by generational families in Leominster: we bleed blue. And we do. Michael's father, Ralph, played at LHS in the 60s and was he himself inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2012. His brother Gary was a standout player throughout the 80s when we started Parents for Football, when 2.5 hit, and we wanted to continue the programs for the football team. I was a Pop Warner cheerleader, then an LHS cheerleader, as was my daughter Kim, who went on to coach the Dolphins. Sorry. The cheerleaders at Pop Warner. Kim created and now helps maintain the leominsterfootball.com website, so you can learn more every day. We do bleed blue. It had to change to crimson for a while. As we were going through Michael's things, all the presentations that he was honored with, we sorted through all kinds of awards, certificates, scholarships, other accolades Michael received throughout his prestigious athletic and academic career. I couldn't help but think how much this particular recognition would mean to him. Leominster football was so much more to Michael than winning and losing. Michael began his Blue Devil career, and it just became a family to him. It meant hard work and holding yourself and those responsible, those surrounding you responsible, to a higher standard. It meant integrity, leadership, and respect that went well beyond the game of football. Blue Devil football is steeped in tradition, as Mr. Remy noted. Following in the footsteps who came before and leading a path for those who will follow, those young gentlemen that have left the room, it is part of your very core, and it remains throughout your life. The friendships you've made on the field and those years will remain to this day in your hearts. Michael's teammates are constantly in contact, and they continue to generously support our efforts in the events we hold in Michael's honor throughout the year. This is about family. Family you will always keep in touch with and come back to visit, especially on Thanksgiving against Fitchburg. We humbly accept this award in Michael's behalf and thank you all for recognizing qualities that are truly defined him to those who love and miss him so much. And I want to let you know that his number, 22, will be carried on by Connor Marchand, which is awesome. Thank you very much to the committee.
I fully expected to induct the next person, who happens to be my brother-in-law, John Crowley. And as it got close, Coach Bayette asked me several years ago, when it comes time to induct John, I'd like to be a part of it. And I couldn't resist. And when I asked him to do it, he said, "Oh, really?" And I told John he was going to do it, and John was as thrilled for it. So at this time, we're going to have Mike come up and induct John Crowley, please.
Before I induct John, I'd like to issue an apology to both John and Gil. It seems that John went to a lot of trouble to write out a lot of the stats that he has accomplished as a player. And he gave them to Gilly, and Gilly and I arranged a clandestine meeting in the rear of St. Leo's Church after the 7:30 Mass last Sunday. And I put that whole sheet in that place, that special place Well, when you turn 70 and CRS takes over, that special place might as well become a black hole. So tonight I told John what I had done, and he went to the trouble of writing out another one. I think you must have that memorized. But I want to get into, some of the things. It really didn't matter to me if I had the stat sheet or not, because the things that brought us here at this moment to honor John are firmly implanted in my memories. And it wouldn't have mattered if I had a sheet or not. I would have known just exactly what I was going to say. So let me begin by saying that in the season of 1981, when John was a senior, we went into the season, Joe Hickey, who's sitting over there, and myself, and we had everything pretty well arranged as to who was going to be what and who was going to do this and that. And John was going to play two ways, as wide receiver and defensive back. And Dom Delkey was going to be our featured back who was going to carry the ball all the time. Well, unfortunately, Dominic never got into the season. He sustained a season-ending injury very early on, and we lost him. So now we had to look and see who was going to step up. Some of our other players were still very young. They really weren't ready for that primetime slot at that point in time. But John filled the bill. We ended up putting in a play, which was a jet pitch, and I have never, in all the years I've been coaching, seen anybody run it quite like John did. We had Billy Seacott, and he would just cave down that outside, pull that tackle around, and he would just clear out everybody, and John was off to the races. But in that team, that year, see if I can read this without my glasses. He led the team in rushing, receiving, touchdowns, and takeaways. What am I going to do with those? He had 10 TDs and 1,000 yards, 5 interceptions, 3 fumble recoveries. And that caught the eye of a lot of schools who were looking for that kind of caliber. John and I did a lot of traveling that winter because his father, Dr. Crowley, was unable to take the time away from the practice to bring him here and there, so I filled in. And luckily, the superintendent, the principal, everybody on down gave me the time to take him here and there. John was offered full scholarships by BC, BU, Northeastern, UMass, UNH, and he chose UMass. And much to the dismay of a couple of Boston schools, namely BU and Northeastern, they were so disenchanted with the fact they couldn't land John, they dropped their programs. So, we had a good time. We get to go, and while we're in Boston, one day we went over and we met the Patriots cheerleaders because they have their thing in Boston, and we were looking to put a fundraiser together. And when they saw John, they said, "Oh yeah, we're coming." So that helped us a lot. But John was a prolific football player. Just the stats that I read can help show you what he did that season and what his accomplishments were. Some of the other things, he was selected as captain of the Worcester Telegram and Gazette All-Star team, selected as Leominster Coaches Award top athlete, holder of several track and field records, captain of all 3 sports, football, basketball, and track in his senior year. That shows what his teammates thought of him. In my 40 years of coaching, I learned that there are 3 types of people in the world. The first type is those who make things happen. The second type is those who watch things happen, and the third type is those who wonder what the hell just happened. Well, John was definitely the first type. He made things happen. He brought the play of all of his teammates up to another level. And for that, I will be indebted to him for the rest of my life. It was the starting point of a change in Leominster football. We got into Brockton. We were undefeated at the time, and we got our butts handed to us. And I realized at that point that we just weren't strong enough to take on the teams like Brockton and all the other teams down in Eastern Mass. So that's when we first started instituting our weight room. We raised money. John helped. He got the cheerleaders. We had a thing that probably wasn't worth the price of admission at the Elks. And we raised money and we put it in. And the next year, even though John wasn't with us, Brockton came to town and we kicked their butts. So he was the start of all that, you know, the things that he did, as well as all his teammates. And for that, he deserves this award. He was probably the finest football player I've ever had the honor to coach, and that not only includes high school, but also the 20 years I spent coaching college football and those players. So without further ado, I want to bring John up and have him recognized for the player he was.
He's gonna stand here?
I'm going to go stand over there where I'm out of sight.
Yeah, I need elbow room.
You do.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see so many friends I haven't seen in a long time. And Mike, I appreciate all those beautiful comments. Some of them are true. And I promise in a few moments I'll get back at you and try to pay you back for that. To the selection committee, I'd like to thank you for this honor, which I'm humbled to receive. To the other inductees this evening, I'd like to congratulate each and every one of you. Just being mentioned alongside you guys makes this night even more special for me. The hardest hit I ever took on Leominster High football field came in 1975 as a 5th grade water boy. I got tangled up and ultimately trampled in the end zone in some pregame celebration. And it was that day forward I knew I wanted to play for Leominster High. Now, you might not think being a water boy for 5 consecutive seasons is a great recipe for success. But you see, I saw it differently. Over those fall seasons, I had the opportunity to observe and learn from some of the greatest coaches of the era, like Hannigan, Bolio, Dubzinski, Mercier, and Viette. I had a sideline pass to see some of the greatest players of that era, like Donfro, Kerouac, Ringer, and Pignata. But it was through the eyes and friendship of the trainer, John Cully, my life's dearest friend, one of my life's dearest friends, who I learned some of the greatest lessons. Through his friendship and his teachings, I learned about devotion, commitment, and sacrifice. It was John who would get up those early days, drive over to the house, and if I shut my eyes, even today, 36 years later, I can hear those empty water coolers bouncing around the back of his pickup truck. He'd pull down the driveway, and I'd excitedly get into the front seat. We'd drive across town to the Leominster Ice House. We'd fill those coolers with ice. Chris Young was probably right beside me every 5 years that we did that. And we had a great tradition. You've heard that name, that word, a couple times tonight. Years later, when it was my time to play for Leominster, yeah, I had my license, and I could have drove. But on game day, John Cully would drive over and pick me up. Not because we were superstitious, but because that's the way we went to the games. We went together. And that's what makes Leominster so special. I look out here and I see former teammates, I see former cheerleaders, I see coaches, I see fans. And if I was to ask each and every one of you just to shut your eyes for one moment, we'd have several hundred images of positivity. And that's the true definition of success and tradition. As I think back on our senior season and the team that we had some really great athletes. And we had some real tough son of a bees, too. Some of them I was actually more afraid of off the field than on, I'll have to be honest. But we came together as a team. And me being up here is a tribute to each and every one of you. Because one thing's for sure is football is a team sport. 11 people all doing their job. And if that happens, maybe one person can stand out. Without each and every one of you, I wouldn't be up here tonight. So to that back table, I see a bunch of you. Go guys. I appreciate it, and congratulations to you for coming in with me tonight. I'd also like to thank the coaches that year. Coach Hickey, Coach Marchand, Coach DeCarolis, Coach Callahan, Coach Ron Palazzi, Dave's father, no longer with us, and Coach Mastre Faro, for your guidance and support. But I want to call out Coach Viette. Many of you don't know, in 1981, there was a lot of budget cuts going on, and there was this big rumor that we might not even have a football team. Coach took control as a 33-year-old man, his first head coaching job 2 weeks before the start of the season. 2 weeks. And his ability to bring us all together in quick order and put together a Super Bowl run is a testament of the man he is and his leadership capabilities. I'll always remember the infamous Fribble Club. On Monday nights, after the previous week's game, Coach would take select members of the team that had an outstanding play, that being an outstanding tackle, a block, a touchdown, or what he used to call the Covered Stove Award, which was the hardest hit of the game. And he'd take time out of his day after teaching all day, coaching, and then on to Friendly's Ice Cream for one of those thick milkshakes called the Fribble. And it was during these times that Coach got to know his players. He got to know about the trials and tribulations of then 17-year-old boys turning into men. And I think back about those days, and I had my share of Fribbles that year, and I'm not too sure all these years later if it was the outstanding play I had on the field or it was just Coach wanted to keep some weight on me during the year. But either way, Coach, when I think about those that have helped shape my character, especially around commitment, teamwork, and the leadership philosophy that I've taken into the business world, I have you right at the top of that list. And for that, I'm forever grateful. To my friends and family, you know I don't have to say much. I'd like to call out just a couple of my sisters that traveled a long way, and one flew to be here tonight. Your love, support throughout the years means the world to me. And in closing, and most importantly, I'd like to thank my wife, Lisa, and my daughter, Kristen, and my other daughter, Elizabeth, for their unconditional love, which continues to make my life complete. Thank you very much.
What?
I got a plaque.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I got a plaque.
Does he get a book?
Pay for the door?
No, those are for the team. No, he comes for the team, he gets that. Okay. We're going to go on to the contributors, folks, and at this time, Mark Bonanza is going to speak on behalf of inducting Mike Austin. Thank you, Gil.
There are 80 million American children involved in youth sports. They are coached by tens of thousands of volunteers, and those coaches have a very large responsibility with the country's most important resource, our youth. There are coaches that are highly successful. They win coveted championships and caught off big trophies and important awards. Some are highly skilled tacticians, brilliant minds who demand a great deal from their young athletes. But not one of these coaches will ever be a better mentor to their players than Mike Austin. If you knew Mike, you already know why. In a single word, he cared. He spent more than 3 decades dedicated to the youth of Leominster. Over that long period of time, there was not one young athlete that he didn't take a personal interest in. His instruction was not limited to the field of play. He was concerned about their schoolwork and grades, their respect for their parents, and the way they conducted themselves on the football field. Those primary values he emphasized every single day. He did the extra things, organizing countless team parties, family time, fundraisers, or anything else his team or the league required. He had a broad, magnetic smile, and I think we can all picture that right now. When Michael laughed, he brightened the world. I had the distinct honor of coaching with him for 3 years, Pop Warner, and I have so many stories. I can think back to some of the classical weigh-ins you have in Pop Warner where the opposing team comes in with 6 or 7 players at 10 pounds overweight. And Mike was always, let them play, because he cared about kids. Didn't matter to him. Bring them all on. Sometimes he had a bark, and it was certainly worse than his bite. I can remember in particular one November night when the wind was blowing about 25 miles an hour and it was sleeting, and he was a little bit frustrated with the kids. And he said, I've been doing this for 22 years. And he told the kids, I think I'm going to go out and get married or something. And I just looked at him and calmly said, keep coaching. No offense to anybody in the audience, significant others, including my own. Michael loved football, but he loved his players even more. The dedication and sacrifice he gave to thousands of players should never be forgotten. I'm confident it never will. Tonight we take a small step to recognize Mike. It is wholly inadequate, but Mike wouldn't care a single bit. He was never in it for that. He was a humble man who loved his family dearly and lived the lessons his mom so lovingly inspired, chief among those, put others before yourself. I had the great honor to be his friend, and I know that many people in this room feel in their hearts exactly what that means. In the very first game I coached with Mike, I was introduced to a custom he practiced all of those years of coaching. I think it describes him aptly. He gathered the team together, 30 young adolescents with excitement of the upcoming contest coursing through their veins. On his instruction, the young players all took a knee. And then they prayed. They prayed not just for victory, but they prayed for no serious injuries to either team. Mike was the ultimate sportsman. None of us will ever forget his heart. His memory lives on in us in the thoughts of the athletes he coached. I am truly honored to proclaim that Mike Austin is a member of the Leominster Football Hall of Fame. And I would ask his brother John to come up and accept his award on his behalf.
Oh, my Lord. You know, a few friends had asked me, what are you going to say when you get up here? And, I just don't know. There's nothing you can write about Mike. Being nervous getting up here. I speak at recovery meetings, and it came easy to talk about recovery. As many as you know that, I had problems with drugs and alcohol. I've done some vacation time legally. And bringing that, towards what Michael was about is Mike used to come and visit me at that legal residence I had and encourage me that he knew I could do the right things. And, Michael never hated me for what I became, because we don't grow up to become drug addicts and alcoholics. That's not what we want to do. But Michael knew that I had something in me that he knew I could do, and that is recover. So Michael would come up to that legal residence and just encourage me. And Michael and the other inductee, Louis Earthquake or Sugar Bear Austin, who also was inducted years back, came up, and I'd never witnessed Michael in my entire life cry. And Michael and my brother Louis had to come up and tell me my sister died. And that was the worst thing that Michael and Louis had to do. And it was horrible. But Michael continued to come up and visit me and encourage me to do the right things. And, Michael, and I'm not saying that to put my own self down, that, Michael had nothing here to be proud of. But, when I left that legal residence, I came out and started to do the right things. And Michael told me many times how proud he was of me, of doing what I do is the right thing. I put the toys down. I got married to my beautiful wife, Rose, out there. And come January 2nd, which Michael I know will be proud of, I'll have 11 years of being clean and sober, sobriety. Thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Bonanza and Gil and the committee for inducting Michael, and it is well deserved. But I'm going to throw Michael under the bus. Michael really didn't like football. Michael didn't like baseball. He didn't like baseball. Michael used them sports as an excuse. We're Army children. My father, John Sr., who was also the very first umpire in the family. And being very strict, and this is where Michael learned about discipline, respect for our parents, and love. My mother used to call Mike and say, "Michael, can you come over here and cut the grass?" So Michael would call me up and say, "John, can you do me a favor? Can you go cut the grass? I got a game." And, football or basketball or baseball, you had a game, all right, Mike. And as time goes, my mother had called Mike and said, "Michael, can you come clean the house?" So Michael would get on the phone and call me and say, "John, can you go over to the house and clean the house with Mom?" And I said, "Okay." Michael had a game for 35 years. I love that kid. I'm telling you. That was the baby brother. And a few things that Michael was. Michael was a mama's boy. He loved our mother dearly. I loved my mother, I loved my father, but Michael just had this special bond with our mother. It was mama, mama, mama. And that, shows you young ones out there, and of course, how much we love our parents. Michael had a daughter, Elena. He loved her dearly. That was Michael's world. And, Michael found God, which was number one in Mike's life. Because without God, we have nothing. And for this guy up here who also accepted God, that's what keeps me clean and sober a day at a time. And, Mike, he bled Leominster. Michael did nothing but work, took care of his kid, and Leominster sports, football, basketball, baseball. I didn't even know Michael was into tennis, and he played that too. But imagine Big Brother John, and I wanted to grow up to be just like Mike. And I respect it. Wanted to thank Mr. Merchant and company with the dedication of the bench yesterday at Doyle Field. And, I said to myself, and I was telling Rose, when I get up there, I'm going to get Michael. If they let me through the gates. Hello? God, Jesus, can I come in and see Mike for a minute? But I'm sure they'll let me through the gate because I've learned a lot through the years with recovery and what Michael has done. With Michael, it was all about the young youth and not, like Mr. Bedanza said, it's not about just the sport. It's about respect. It's about discipline. It's about honoring your mother and your father and your siblings and your friends. Michael was not perfect, as none of us are. But to me, Mike Austin was a perfect brother. He never put me down for what I've done. And that's one thing with the youth that I wanted to know, and also the adults. Michael encouraged. So I say to you on Michael's behalf, encourage, don't discourage. And it's something that I had put together because in recovery, where I speak at meetings on how to sit there and do this one day at a time. If you encourage, that gives somebody something to look forward to, something to work hard for. But if you discourage, that means somebody wants to keep somebody down. And it's just not going to work that way. And that's not what Michael did for me. Michael always encouraged me to do the right thing and to want to do the right things. Michael did nothing but eat, sleep, work, and Leominster sports. Pop Warner was his passion. And then he moved up, and here he is working for Coach Palazzi and other coaches. And there's one coach I want to say hello to, and that's Coach Fayette. Where are you? How you doing, Coach? It's good to see you. But, I love that kid, my baby brother, and, I have to say that when Margaret Anza had told me that he would like to say a few words on Michael's behalf, and that is there anybody in the family that would accept the award? I goes, it has to me. I'm the last one. But I'm not done. It's not my time. What I'd like to do is go out and help others with problems with drugs and alcohol. And Michael kept telling me to keep helping others in that mission, because it's really tough to put that down, especially the young ones. And that's where Michael always tried to grab a hold of, the young ones, the youth, to try to build them up to become great parents, sportsmen, and great human beings. Michael truly loved God, and that's what motivated Michael. And, you know, I got a lot of friend requests on Facebook after Michael's passing. Many of you have asked to be my friends, but, you know, the reason why I got them friends, or you people as friends, is because you're looking out for me and making sure I'm okay. Because that's what Leominster is all about. And I'm glad my father, John Sr., migrated us here to Leominster, which is a great city that I'm always proud to be a part of, and a part of the community. I love that kid to death. And in closing, I want to congratulate everybody who got inducted. And Michael told me he wanted me to accept this award for him because he's got a game upstairs. And thank you, everybody.
Our next inductee I've had the pleasure of working with over the last several years in an effort to build, preserve, and sort of disseminate the heritage of Leominster football. And I remember one of the very early stories that Gil told me in connection with this journey. He had been invited by Ralph Case to go to the Thanksgiving game and get a chance to go inside the Fitchburg Fieldhouse and see all of the tradition and honor that that structure carried. And if you've been in there, you might know that there's a fireplace and there's some oak paneling, and there's a lot of old trophies and photographs, and it really is a hallowed place. And of course, it's been there since 1918. And that really gave Gil some vision about not only the importance of the rivalry, but the importance of the facilities that house this rivalry every year. And clearly, Gil Donatelli is a visionary, but visionaries alone don't get things done. It takes leadership, and leadership is the capacity to translate that vision into reality. And Gil truly resembles and epitomizes those leadership characteristics. After that visit to the field house, he was instrumental in forming the Doyle Field Foundation in 2002 and served on its board of directors and initially as its vice president. That organization, which continues to operate today, has raised over $6 million towards the renovations at Doyle Field to make it once again, second to none in the state. I've had the honor of being there with Gil and working with him, and I can remember at one of our first inductions bringing Vince Papali of Philadelphia Eagles fame to the field, and how impressed he was with the facility that Leominster has. And that facility is really very much the work and effort of Gil Donatelli. And we have, we all in Leominster owe him a great deal of gratitude for that work. In 2005, Gil was elected president of that organization, and he remains president. His wife, Mikey, is also a member of the board and has worked closely and supported Gil and the board in its efforts. Back in 2009, I happened to run into Gil in a downtown restaurant, and I, at that time, was planning to reenact the first Leominster-Fitchburg football game of 1894 on the Doyle pasture, which happens to be Gilly's backyard, essentially. And I said, geez, I think I owe him the courtesy of letting him know that there might be 1,000 people showing up one day to a football game next to his house. So I kind of inched my way over there, and I said, hey, Gil, I got this idea. And at that time, I was surprised that the trustees of reservations who managed the property even gave it quarter and we're going to let it happen. And I mentioned it to him, and he enthusiastically endorsed it, and actually became the coach of the Leominster team. And we had a tremendous time doing it. The people thought we were absolutely crazy, playing full contact football with no equipment, with not young men, but semi-pro football players. It was something to behold. But really out of that effort was born another vision that Gil had, and another vision that he was able to bring to reality, which is this Hall of Fame. And he had this idea for some period of time, and he mentioned it to me, and I, of course, thought it was a great idea. I had just, coincident with that first, that reenactment game, written my first book on Leominster football history, and I was really heartened that Gil was able to take me under his wing and work with me toward organizing the Leominster Football Hall of Fame, and it's been a labor of love ever since. And these events really are a pleasure to be involved in each year. But that was Gil's idea. It had been kicked around for probably generations before that, but it had never happened. Not until Gil turned vision into reality. In addition to that, Gil is the chairman of the Doyle Field Commission, which is responsible under the gift of Bernard Doyle with managing the field, which also has a very vital effect on keeping that facility what it is. You know, next year, the upper field will be involved in about $600,000 of improvements, including the walking track and the playground equipment. And I was thinking back, you know, that was where the first 1894 football game was played between Leominster and Fitchburg. And trying to imagine today those young men playing on what was a trotting park where they raced horses, thinking about all of the things that happened on that site, all of the improvements. And, you know, it is just an amazing thing that we have here in Leominster, and it really is a part and parcel of our tradition. Gil is supported by a very strong foundation, and I don't mean the Doyle Field Foundation, I mean his loving family. He has 3 sons, his oldest Gilly and Gilly's wife Carla, Greg and his wife Jillian, and Garrett and his wife Emily, and 6 beautiful grandchildren who I can't name, but I know they're all great kids, and they're the most behaved kids I've ever seen in my life. So congratulations to them. At this time, I would like to bring my friend, Gil Donatelli, to accept the induction into the Leominster Football Hall of Fame.
I'm exhausted thinking about the things he said I did. But I'll tell you, I may be the one who's receiving this award as a Hall of Fame inductee, as a contributor, and as the ones who have gone in before me, all of them, are revered by me, from my father-in-law to Connie Crowley to Bernard Doyle to Ralph Case, John LaStella, Mike Austin. This is a pretty special company to be around. And I accept this on behalf of, I may be the president of those organizations, but the crew that run behind us are extraordinary. Joe DeCarolis, Mark, Pat LaPointe, the crew that we have, Laura Proetti on our board of directors. It's just extraordinary how much work that once we design a play, you know, they run it. And it doesn't happen without capable people around you. This is an endless list of people who made this Doyle Field thing happen. It was gonna be, you know, a $200,000 renovation of the locker room upstairs to make it a Hall of Fame, to which they asked me to pitch Louise Doyle, and she respectfully declined. She said it wasn't a big enough project for her to get involved in. And she said, do something more complex and inclusive of the whole facility. So we raised $75,000 from scratch to have plans and drawings made up of what Doyle Field could look like. You know what it does look like now. We've all been there for some reason. And I had to go pitch that to her. And that was about a $15 million bill, for which she said, I'm in. You raise $7.5 million and I'll give you $7.5 million. That's what started that project going on. And we're lucky to have, obviously, someone like Louise. You know what her father did with Doyle Field. He also owned the land where Leominster Hospital is. He owned the land where St. Leo's is. These are all things that Leominster benefited from the Doyle family. And she didn't give us quite $7.5 million, but she gave us a considerable amount of money while we were building, and left us, you know, more than $1.5 million when she passed. So we're off to a good start with what we've done. We're going to do the upper field next, walking track, bigger bathrooms, handicap accessible. There's a lot more planned up there. And the combination of the DPW under the direction of Pat LaPointe when he was at the head of that, and Wendy Weeks, who wrote grants, both state and federal, along with Pat LaPointe and Judy Sumner, the Recreation Department. We made a lot of progress and we got a lot of traction. So I thank those who have been on drafting and pushing us to get this done, but I may be the recipient of it, but it comes at the toils of these other people who are behind me on this. That's about all I've got to say. I accept it, as I said, in honor of the people who have helped me get their part. I had good examples. My mother-in-law was a donation of her time and effort for 28 years on the school committee. My wife has been currently the chairman of the Leominster Recreation Department for 25 years. And it's an example of donating your time and money and effort that benefit others, not necessarily what benefit ourselves. And I've learned that from both of them. Thank you, Mikey, for that lesson. And thank you to my family for all the support you've given me during this journey. Thank you very much. Historian and curator. Yes. All right, what are we doing next? Just the team? All right, Joe. We're going to induct the team. We're going to wrap it up here.
All right. You want to do the team? How do we do that? No, you just center this. Yeah. Okay. You got your list? Yeah. Go ahead. All right. We're coming to the end of the program, and this is always a special time when we get to introduce a team. Leominster's had a lot of great teams,
And they have really represented us very well. And these team inductions end up being a bit of a reunion each year. And as a committee, we've decided that each Super Bowl team deserves recognition by the Hall of Fame. It's not an easy thing to do, and Leominster holds, how many is it, Joe? You know the number, right? How many Super Bowls do we hold? 12 Super Bowls, or the highest number in the state, which again just proves what kind of football program Leominster has. So at this point, we are going to call out the names to the 1981 Leominster High School football team and Super Bowl winner. And a round of applause for all of those team members, please.
Okay, so when you come up this way and we'll congregate over here. And then we're going to take a team picture after. In his first year as head coach, he took Leominster, as John Crowley said, to a Super Bowl. Head coach Mike Viette. Offensive coordinator and very underrated as a coach, but a huge influence on all of us, Joe Hickey. Coach Rick Marchand. Coach. Tell him to go down there. He's got to go down there. Coach Ron Palazzi. Accepting for Coach Togo was his wife Lorraine Palazzi. Coach Paul Callahan. Accepting for him his son Kerry and wife Betty. Lorraine, just stay right here. Oh, okay. Coach John Cully. Accepting for Coach Cully is his daughter Connie Curley. John Crowley. Keith Robichaud. Bill Carroll. Dan Crowley. Billy Penning. Dave Pavlitis. Accepting for Dave his brother Mike. I don't know if he's here. Tony Ferrara, accepting for Tony. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Accepting for Dave is Dave was our quarterback. His sister Sue. Tony Ferrara, accepting for Tony's his sister Lisa Salvatore. David Ringer. Bob Zarella, accepting for him his brother Don. E.J. Torsey. Don Delacare. Sean Maynard. Gary Farr. David Palazzi. Michael Flanagan. Rick Dandini. Accepting for Rick is his cousins Peter and Anthony Dandini. Anthony was our Lou Little Award winner last year. And I believe that's it. Am I missing anyone? Oh, Nelson, you are here. I'm sorry. Nelson Lee, I'm sorry.
Okay, I think we're kind of going to wrap it up here. I'm going to get in deep trouble if I don't have these 5 come up on stage and just walk through. They've been bugging me all night, so any Donatellis that want to come up, now's the chance. All right, everybody, thank you for your time and pleasure having me here. We'll see you next year. Come on, Sarah.